I had always thought that moving in with my in-laws after our apartment renovation would be temporary. My husband, Jake, had suggested it after a pipe burst in our kitchen, and we were forced to find a place to stay. His mother, Lorraine, welcomed us warmly, and his father, Richard, seemed as stoic as ever. At first, I thought I'd have trouble adjusting, but the warmth of their suburban home, the gentle creak of the hardwood floors, and the garden that smelled of rosemary in the mornings slowly began to comfort me. Still, there was always something quiet and intense about Richard. He wasn't unkind, just reserved, watchful. He had a way of listening without interrupting, of noticing things that others missed. I didn't pay it much mind until the night everything changed. Jake had gone out of town for a 3-day work conference. Lorraine was visiting her sister in Florida for the week. That left just me and Richard in the house. I spent most of my day working from my laptop in the guest bedroom and trying to avoid any awkward silences during meals. The first night, we hardly spoke over dinner. Richard simply nodded occasionally, responding only in short phrases. By the second night, something shifted. After dinner, Richard offered me a glass of wine. I hesitated but then accepted. We sat in the living room, the lights dim, an old jazz record playing softly on the stereo. He asked me about my work, how I liked living in the city, and what my childhood had been like. It was the most we had ever spoken. His tone was gentle, curious, and open. I was surprised by how comfortable I felt. For the first time, he didn't seem distant. He seemed vulnerable. "I used to be an artist," he said suddenly, after a long pause. I blinked. "Really? I didn't know that." "I gave it up a long time ago," he replied. "Lorraine wanted me to work a steadier job. So I did. But I always missed it." He got up and walked down the hallway. When he returned, he held a small, worn sketchbook. He handed it to me without a word. Inside were delicate pencil drawings, landscapes, portraits, still life. The detail was breathtaking. There was one portrait in particular, a woman with strong cheekbones and curly hair, that stopped me. "She was my muse," he said quietly. "Before Lorraine." There was something deeply sad in his voice. I closed the book gently. "Why did you stop drawing?" Richard looked at me. "Because sometimes when you make a choice, you don't get to turn back." The moment hung there, thick with unspoken thoughts. I said good night soon after, feeling a strange weight in my chest. The next day, I woke up early and found Richard already in the kitchen. He made coffee for both of us and handed me a mug without speaking. I was beginning to realize he expressed himself best through actions, not words. Later, I noticed he'd cleaned the garden and set up a canvas outside. When I stepped out to stretch my legs, I found him sketching again. "You inspired me," he said simply. "I did. You reminded me that it's not too late." That afternoon, I sat beside him as he sketched the roses blooming along the fence. He taught me how to shade leaves, how to let the pencil flow. It was innocent. It was peaceful. I felt like I was connecting with someone who had been buried under decades of silence and compromise. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about his drawings, about the sadness in his eyes. I got up and walked downstairs for some water. Richard was already there, sitting in the dark at the kitchen table. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Couldn't sleep." I sat down across from him. There was a long silence before he spoke again. "Jake doesn't know this, but before Lorraine, I was in love with someone else. She was the one I should have ended up with. But I made the safe choice. The right one, according to everyone else. Sometimes I wonder how different life would have been." I didn't know what to say. His voice was trembling. He wasn't asking for sympathy, he was confessing. "I think you remind me of her," he said suddenly. I felt my breath catch in my throat. "Not in a romantic way," he quickly added. "But in how free you seem, how passionate. I forgot people like that existed." I relaxed a little, though my mind was racing. Richard stood up, took the empty glass from my hand, and turned toward the sink. "You and Jake. You have something good. Don't let time dull it. He left the room, and I sat there, stunned. When Jake came home the next day, I couldn't stop watching Richard. Something had changed in him. He smiled more, talked a little more during dinner, even showed Jake some of his new sketches. Jake was surprised, said he hadn't seen his dad so lively in years. One evening, Lorraine called to say her flight was delayed and she'd be gone another few days. Jake had work, so he left early the next morning. I found Richard outside painting again. I want to give you something, he said. He handed me a framed sketch, roses, drawn with intricate care and softness. This is for you. For reminding me I still have something left to give. I thanked him, genuinely touched. But something in his eyes gave me pause. There was a look I couldn't quite place. Gratitude, regret, longing. I took the sketch and placed it carefully in my suitcase. Weeks passed. We moved back into our renovated apartment, life resumed, and the days became filled with errands and meetings. But that moment with Richard lingered in my memory. I didn't tell Jake everything, only that his dad had shared some art with me and opened up a little. Months later, Richard was hospitalized after a heart complication. We rushed to his side. In those final days, he spoke more to Jake than I'd ever seen. He told him he was proud, told Lorraine he had no regrets. Just before he passed, he called me into the room alone. He looked tired but peaceful. You helped me remember who I used to be, he said softly. Thank you for that. He reached over and squeezed my hand. I never told her, he whispered. But I loved her till the end. He didn't say who he meant. But I knew it wasn't Lorraine. After the funeral, Jake found the sketchbook among Richard's things. He flipped through it with tears in his eyes. I didn't know he was this talented, he said. He was, I whispered. He really was. Life moved forward. Jake and I grew closer. The time with his father had shown me how easily passion and joy can be buried under the weight of responsibility. I learned to treasure the small things, to speak more openly, to chase what makes my soul stir. Richard's final lesson wasn't in words. It was in art, in presence, in letting go of regret before it's too late. And sometimes, when I sit by the window with the framed sketch of roses, I remember that strange, quiet week, when two people at very different stages of life reminded each other what it means to feel alive.